An international station for an international city. This is Radio 3. Money Talk.
Good morning, this is Peter Lewis. Welcome to a brand new week of Money Talk on Radio 3. It's 8:03 in Hong Kong on Monday the 6th of February. Today sees a further relaxation of COVID border controls between Hong Kong and mainland China, with the remaining road checkpoints reopening, daily travel quotas eliminated, and the scrapping of PCR tests for most travellers between the mainland and Hong Kong. Chief Executive John Lee has vowed to seize on business opportunities for Hong Kong during his trip to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and to broaden the city's economic and trade cooperation with the region. Hong Kong's private sector returned to growth in January. Data from the S&P Global Purchasing Managers Index survey showed Friday. The reading came in at 51.2, and the economy's business confidence hit a record high. China's service sector, which includes industries such as retail and travel, rebounded back into expansionary territory in the first month of 2023, according to the Caixin S&P Global Services PMI. And the United States added 517,000 jobs in January. That's the highest since August 2022. The jobless rate fell to 3.4% from 3.5% the previous month.
567 AM, Radio 3.
Time's 8:25. On the phone now is Shanghai-based independent economist Andy Sher. Morning, Andy.
Good morning, Peter.
Now, we have seen, following the Chinese New Year holidays, some high-frequency consumption data. It does suggest, doesn't it, a decent start to a consumption rally in 2023. What do you think from your position there? Are you encouraged by what you've seen in terms of the pickup in activity over the holidays?
Well, I think a lot of people hadn't been home for 3 years. So the desire of going back this time was very strong. So that I think that was a special case, and we need to be cautious about how consumers will behave later on, and if they have the financial means to consume if they want to. So I think that still we need to be cautious.
Are you expecting a pickup in consumption demand over the course of this year, particularly in sort of like discretionary areas, or do you think it's going to be rather cautious?
Well, obviously there's some pickup. People couldn't go to restaurants during the lockdowns last year, and they obviously and they couldn't travel. So these two areas will see some significant recovery, but would they recover to the levels before the pandemic? I seriously doubt it. So there is a pickup, but it's not very strong. It's not certainly it's not going to be a growth driver. And the government is far more interested in getting people back to work.
Now, you say you say it's not going to be a growth driver. That's obviously not what the government wants to see, is it? Because the State Council was saying last week that they want consumption to really be at the centre of the Chinese economy. Oh,
they've been saying that for 20 years. So I think about it in terms of what the government is doing, it's a different thing. You know, the government hasn't given households or enterprises financial relief during 3 years of pandemic. I would say this is a special case among industrialized economies. So obviously, I'm not sure the government really means it.
So you make a good point there that the government didn't provide direct monetary stimulus, particularly for lower income households during the pandemic, which was really the opposite of what a lot of other countries did, where they did provide basically checks, didn't they, for the lower income households. So do you think, and that's obviously a large part of the Chinese economy, so do you think that's going to add more uncertainty to things like employment and income growth amongst private sectors and amongst households?
Yeah, I think that the government's focus is not on that, despite what it is saying. The government is very focused on getting people back to work. The government is very focused on great power competition. So if there is money, the government wants to spend it. on what it wants to do. So I think that it's China is different. China has a clear goal, and the goal is not to maximize consumption.
So what do you make then of the PMI data that we saw last week? China's services sector, according to Caixin, that did rebound back into expansionary territory in China. The business activity index rose to 52.9, so that's new orders. They also increased for the first time in 5 months. There does seem to be a sign when you look at that forward indicating sort of data that things are bouncing back a bit in China.
Well, obviously, the factories are getting back to work, and people couldn't go to factories, and a lot of export orders were not filled. So that's something I've been expecting: fairly strong recovery in factory and in export, and that will be driving the economy. But in terms of the domestic side, it's going to be anemic. You look at the property sector, obviously the developers are still not servicing their debt. They get some dedicated liquidity to keep projects going or construction going, and that's about it. And then you look at the local governments, they couldn't sell land. They don't have the money to pay the civil servants. So they certainly want to have a spare money to keep going all these projects. So I think a lot of quite a significant weaknesses on the domestic side. So the hope is still that on the external side, the global economy is still ticking, and Chinese exports are very competitive.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. It's always a pleasure talking with you. That's Shanghai-based independent economist Andy Scher.
You're listening to Money Talk on RTHK Radio 3.